This is Slick,
This is Rudy.
and this week we are talking about the future. It's a new year, a new decade, and we have two playlists that we're going to give you, four songs that are forward looking.
Forward looking, but I think we both surprised ourselves a little bit. It's a little dark, but we'll balance things nicely when we talk about
It's
the future.
it's going to get a bit dark in here.
All right, this one you may well know, you may not know it, and if you don't know it, I really don't know where you've been.
You forgot? Forgot the magnetism of Robin Zander or the charisma of Rick Nielsen?
That's kid stuff.
It's just come up to 5:35 a.m. Kommen Sie bitte und listen to Kraftwerk.
I don't know, man. I kind of like Van Halen.
Well, yeah, Plum, you do. And you know why you do? Because corporate America is shoving something down your throat and making you believe it because that's what they want you to believe. I mean...
Okay, buddy. I was just trying to cheer us up, so go ahead. Put on some old sad bastard music, see if I care.
That was Big Yellow Taxi by Joni Mitchell, a song in which Joni complains that they paved Paradise to put up a parking lot. A measure which actually would have alleviated traffic congestion on the outskirts of Paradise, something which Joni singularly fails to point out, perhaps because it doesn't quite fit in with her blinkered view of the world. Nevertheless, nice song.
How about the tunes? I want you to want me. The dream police. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Your mama's alright. Your daddy's alright.
I get by because the people who make a special effort to shop here. Mostly young men who spend all their time looking for deleted Smith singles and original, not re-released underline, Frank Zappa albums.
Gang. Yes. I mean, look, you can play an E pentatonic scale at 100 miles an hour till somebody's ears burn off. You can learn that, right? But finding the tangents within the framework, therein lies the artistry, man.
God made your ears. You didn't make them. You gonna argue with God's ears? If it sound good and it feel good, then it's musical. So play it like I say play it. From the top.
That was Sweating Lunatic Iggy Pop, part of our Tuesday night punk pack, which is climaxing at midnight with Madness. This is Norfolk Nights with Alan Partridge, and we're in the middle of Super Talk. Super Talk!
Welcome back. It's episode 16, the Left of the Dial podcast, our first show of 2020. And we were talking about stuff we wanted to lead off with this year. And I think this one sort of organically sprouted out of not just the change in year. We each got into the topic in different ways. I don't want to give up yours yet because I believe the song that got this conversation started is in your list.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, you could say that was maybe the seed of it, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily... I don't know how we want to go about explaining it necessarily, how we want to get into the future. But we've actually just in getting ready for the show and getting the show back going again, we've talked about the topic quite a bit. It's got a lot of facets. It's a way bigger topic than just one single show. So I think we're going to cover some high points, some subtopics rather than try to fit the entire thing in.
Yeah, so our future list, in kind of in formulating mine, things got very unwieldy. So yeah, we'll handle it as economically as we can. But to get us started, do you have anything new musically that you're excited about that you wanted to go over?
A couple of things. I think the biggest news is the death of Jack Sheldon, who was the voice of the Bill in Schoolhouse Rock. The "I'm just a Bill, yes, I'm only a Bill." He wasn't like a full-time vocalist. He was a trumpeter. But I've gone back and listened to some of the stuff that he had on Spotify. I mean, the voice is very, very, very distinct. And I mean, I grew up with Schoolhouse Rock, like pretty much everybody under the age.
Me too.
I never disassociate the voice. The voice is just that.
Yeah, I think everybody who knows the preamble to the Constitution well probably owes something to Schoolhouse Rock.
Yeah, I'd say so. So that's a big deal. I thought the Schoolhouse Rock tribute album in the 90s was one of the very few tribute albums that was like pretty good. Like it showed up in the used record bin pretty quickly after coming out. But
yeah,
I thought as far as those sort of like tribute albums go, it was pretty good. It's not bad.
Yeah, not bad. I like the originals better than most of the covers on that, but it was a pretty good tribute album.
Yeah, Skilo's Mr. Morton is, I mean, it's still a good, it's a banger. That's it. I'm just gonna say it. Skilo, I wish is a banger too, but I'm gonna say that Mr. Morton, that one's worth going back for. I'm gonna throw that on.
It's a little bit off topic because it's a different person in Schoolhouse Rock, but since we're throwing out Schoolhouse Rock covers, I have to mention Elliott Smith's cover of Figure 8.
Yeah, that's a pretty good. Buffalo Tom, Daniel Johnston, Skilo, Moby, Biz Markie, Ween, Lemonhead, Pavement, Better Than Ezra, Blind Melon, Folk Implosion, and there's some others.
Yeah, and the Elliott Smith one that I'm talking about, that was on the album Figure 8. Or no, it actually was not released on that album, but you can find it. He covered Figure 8. It does give the album a title, but is not featured on the album. So you have to do a little looking for that one.
Well, they gave Folk Implosion the job of covering on just a bill, and I'm just going to throw a little grouse in there, and then I'll stop talking about current stuff. But why isn't Natural One on Spotify? It doesn't make any sense why they would not put the only. I mean, they've got other stuff that's worth listening to, and Lou Barlow's good, but like, could you be a bigger a-hole than to like put up everything in your career but the one song everyone knows you for? It doesn't make any sense. Like, is he trying to preserve the artistic legacy of Folk Implosion? Like, is he worried that it'll spoil the pristine image of his bands? I don't. It doesn't make any sense. The only thing comparable to that is my last bit of news and from the music from the break is, I don't know exactly when, but the Church's back catalog is finally back on Spotify. So Life Speeds Up can go back into all the playlists where it was before. I forgot how good the Church was. I might put a playlist together of just top 10 for the Church, because having their real full catalog back on is a big deal. That's a big deal for an old nerd like myself.
All right. Well, okay. So as always, we have playlists on our Spotify page. To find that, you go to Left of the Dial Pod. Is that right, or Left of the Dial Podcast?
Yeah, Left of the Dial Pod.
Left of the Dial Pod.
Pod.
Yeah, it's Left of the Dial Pod. And let's see. So we have our new rotation list for January 2020. Kind of looking backwards a little bit more than forwards, at least on my end. I haven't. I gave new music a couple of weeks off while we're on break, and just let my whims take me where they would. And what I ended up with, well, yeah, there's still more to add for me to add, but got some Waylon Jennings, some Fleetwood Mac, some Zombies. I couldn't resist putting "This Will Be Our Year" on the Spotify list. Some Faces, some Seaverl, just things that are kind of easy for me to go back to every now and then.
Ain't no crime in that. Ain't definitely no crime in that.
Yeah, and some power pop gems that But but power pop is a very comfortable genre for me. I of course love Big Star and love a lot of the other bands. Got some Raspberries, some records, and the only ones on the list.
Yeah, I have put quite a bit up there as well to get the year started. I really think we need to do a Fleetwood Mac specific show. Since I've already spoken my piece on the current music, I will no longer discuss it. But I will say one of the songs I listened to most over the break was "Still Lovin' You" by the Scorpions, because one of my coworkers has convinced me that, like, no, give it another chance. It's great. If I were to get the stats, I do think I probably listened to the Scorpions' "Still Loving You" more than anything over the break. And I'm not ashamed anymore. I'm not ashamed of who I am. It's part of who I am. Now,
all right, well,
on to the future.
Live your truth.
That's the Scorpions' "Still Loving You" is a part of my truth.
All right, well, so we're going on to our playlist then? I
believe we should.
Okay, so this is our topic. It is the future, and I think we maybe went at it in different ways, went at it from different angles. I'm going to put a disclaimer in here right now that mine is very gloom and doom, and I don't want to bring anybody down, but it's not going to be the most uplifting playlist I've ever put out there.
You know what? I don't think we should apologize for it, because as I was prepping for this, I was trying as hard as I could to think of one song that's like optimistic about the future, and there are barely any. I can't actually name one.
Yeah. I mean, we could easily just call this Dystopia. The playlist that we're putting together are the land of dystopia.
I think since we talk primarily about rock music, that's the fact that rock music really formatively is the 60s and 70s, really the prime time of the Cold War. It's not surprising that I think it shouldn't be that most things people would want to sing about the future would be dystopic, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Why don't you start it? Why don't you get this one rolling?
All right. So as I was mentioning before, I've sort of broken them down into a couple of themes. Like there's always a couple of different themes that come up over and over and over again. There were always songs that there are songs that directly sing about the future. Like they deliberately come out and sort of sing about what they think is going to happen. And what's amazing is how often they're either so general they can't be wrong, or if they try any sort of like specificity, it all sounds a little janky, or it just sounds a little corny by the modern standard. Though I want to throw out though that Bob Dylan, God bless him, called his shots pretty clearly, and he got most of it pretty damn right. So I'm going to start with "The Times They Are A-Changin', but I'm going to throw in as a sort of sidecar there, "Hard Rain's Gonna Fall," which is "Hard Rain's Gonna Fall" is my favorite all-time Dylan song. It's probably my favorite all-time song. But in terms of like prognosticating, you really can't do much more. You can't really swing your balls and flex harder than Bob Dylan does on "Times They Are Changing." Homeboy was like 19 or 20, maybe 21 years old when he writes this song, and he's basically just telling like the establishment, everybody with money, everybody with power, like, get out of either help us with what we're doing, or we're going to brush you aside, you bitch. That's pretty intense shit for a 20-year-old kid who comes from, the upper Midwest, where even by his own history, you're taught what he was taught was to abide by the law, to live on the square if you can, and he basically didn't bring any of that with him to New York, or if he did, he quickly dropped it. And I don't think you can do much better than times they are a-changing in terms of calling the future. Now, unfortunately, he didn't, like, we haven't had, or fortunately, we've had enough time that a lot of that stuff, there's some stuff in there I think is still relevant. There are things in that song that still probably should be played out of loudspeakers at events, and kids should be taught, but this is not going to happen. So, Dylan, times they are a-changing. I'm going to say Hard Rain's Gonna Fall belongs up there, too, in terms of, like, songs directly singing about the future that get it right. It's a pretty small cohort of songs. I think times they are a-changing and Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. Probably even, and if I may just take another second, Hard Rain's Gonna Fall to me is not exclusively about nuclear war. I think it's about karma, and I think it's about, if you go out in the world and you look at the abuses and the terrible things, nobody's going to get away with any of this. All of this stuff gets paid back, and eventually, you got to make right all the things that have been wrong. That, to me, is also him directly calling out, like, in a way that's very woke by the modern standard, calling out sort of how we got here. I think he was about as explicit as you could be at the time, in pretty much, in Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. He's about as clear as day as what he thought the future held for a country with the history we have. So, yay, more Bob Dylan talk from me, but I'm not ashamed. But I ain't in that respect, the times are not going to be a-changing for me.
Well, okay, so since we're on Dylan now, and I have a whopping 16-song playlist coming up. Okay. I'm going to mention Bob Dylan as well, because there's another Bob Dylan song that didn't quite make my list, but I gave some thought to, and that's Talking World War III Blues, and it could have easily made my list, but it's maybe too upbeat, maybe too uplifting for this list. I don't know, and. He wasn't the only Minnesotan with Apocalypse on his mind. Prince's 1999, also one that, could easily make any one of these sort of lists. But at the same time, that predicted Doomsday was coming in 1999. So
I agree with you, but 1999 has to be looked at least like the glass is half full. Acknowledging that it's probably not going to end well. Like, that's as pessimistic as it gets, and everybody knows that. But for him to decide that I'm going to put that in the back of my mind and I'm going to have a good time until then, that's about as lemonade as anybody, I think, has made out of the dystopian story. And it's also one of the greatest songs ever written in popular music, so it doesn't hurt.
Yeah. Okay, so my list, which I've decided to title "The Future's Always the Future's Uncertain and the End is Always Near." I don't often quote Jim Morrison, but in this case, that makes for a pretty good title for my purposes.
It's forgiven.
All right. So, so to start off my list, I'm going to go to Devo. And in this case, Devo is on my list kind of to talk about the past as much as about the future. My song is Gates of Steel by Devo. And the lines that I'm kind of focusing on here was, the beginning was the end of everything. The ape regards his tail. He's stuck on it, repeats until he fails. Half a goon, half a god. Man's not made of steel. It just kind of, to me, shows that humans don't learn from their mistakes the way that they should, and therefore they will bring about their own doom. And it might be the first of many times that you hear me say the word doom tonight, and I apologize in advance. But that is my first song on my list.
We got to talk a little Devo, though. We got to talk about a little Devo. Because what made me want to do this topic so much is that there were rumors going around that 2020 was going to be the farewell tour for the band Devo, and I've never seen them. They're one of the last bands that I really want to see that I haven't, and it would put a lot of pressure. Like, I pretty much have to do it this year. Now, I've read some things that said they may not be packing it in, but like Devo is explicitly about the future. Like the name is short for De-Evolution. Like it's literally talking about where we're headed. Their entire project is about where we're headed. So I would throw in, not to bogart your list, but I'm going to throw in, I have to throw a Devo song in there too. And I think Beautiful World, while it's kind of explicitly about the future, I think it encapsulates their whole thing, which is like people are shitty now and nothing is going to stop them from being shitty. Like, so why would we expect technology to like change human beings like who we fundamentally are? The cynicism throughout the entire Devo catalog, I think, finds its purest statement in Beautiful World. And it's just a great song. They're just a great band. They're so much more important than people. I think people are sleeping on them a little bit, and they're more important than history so far is allowing. You can't go wrong pretty much with any of like the Devo Warner Brothers era albums, and even the other stuff is not going to hurt you. The hardcore stuff, and then the post Warner Brothers stuff. There's plenty in there that's really good. Something for Everybody was one of the most bands when they reunite are shit, and their albums are shit. And Devo's were not. Devo's were really good. Something for Everybody and Something Else for Everybody are both, to the extent they're different, are excellent. So I don't know. I'm talking here. Maybe Devo doesn't really believe their own shit. Like they're still around. They didn't die. It didn't consume them. They made it.
Yeah, and Gates of Steel is on here just as much because it's one of my favorite Devo songs as for, like thematically, there are a lot of Devo songs that you can pick from that would fit here. Gates of Steel happens to be one of my favorites, and I think it kind of it's a good starting point for my list.
Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of like it kind of shows that. That is one of their themes. Humans are humans, and they can't really change their stripes as much as they should. They should.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so the second song, which you kind of mentioned, which was kind of the seed of this idea for me, was actually Rush. I'm not the biggest Rush fan in the world, but I don't dislike them that much either. They're certainly good musicians, and if you cherry pick their songs, I believe you can come up with a good list of Rush songs. And I was listening to the song "New World Man" not that long ago, and I was kind of thinking, like it would be kind of good to go through and find some songs that we're talking about the future and still hold up. And I think just this idea in New World Man of not concerned with yesterday, no constant change is here today. That is where we are. We are definitely in a world of constant change, more so by every passing day. It's more of a state of constant change that we're in. And again, it also plays on the idea of not learning from our mistakes. Noble enough to know what's right, but weak enough not to choose it. Wise enough to win the world, and fool enough to lose it.
Yeah, Rush is. I have mixed feelings about Rush. I was a 12-year-old boy once. I was 12 years old, and I think when Spirit Radio was on the radio, so like. Of course I loved Rush. When when I lived with my grandparents in the 70s, I lived where there was a teenage boy. So I got to listen to 2112 with like a strobe light playing and huge volume. Just like I really got the full Rush experience in its time, and I loved them. But when you get a little older, like 2112, which is their like futuristic masterpiece, I guess, is a bunch of like Ayn Rand worship, and it's a bunch of right-wing crap. I do not want to beat Rush over the head about the right-wing shit because they were young and they've repented of it. Like Geddy Lee is the son of a Holocaust survivor. Like the last thing on earth I think they are vicious right-wing libertarians looking for us to all live by the law of the jungle. But they did spend a good chunk of their early career promoting somebody who does believe exactly that horse shit. So I will let that stuff go. I would just say they don't have. I only mentioned 2112 because they don't have the best track record on predicting the future. I really how many we figured it out before. How many years between now and 2112?
Well, it was 92.
92. All right, they got a lot can happen in 92 years. They might get it right, but does anybody want to place an in-game wager bet on whether Rush got 2112 right or not?
Hey, with the predictions that I have in the playlist that I'm going over, we'll be lucky to make it. We'll meet if we make it half that far. We'll be lucky.
All right. Well, I'll just say gambling's legal here in New Jersey. I can. It's true. It's legal in Iowa too. I will suggest prop bets down in Atlantic City if we come up with a good enough one. So, all right. Anyway, I'm giving you I'm giving you my stamp of approval on Rush and New World Man here. The lyrics are a little bit cringy, but the man was trying. It is a little bit off on the optimistic side for my taste. But that's just, if that's as close as optimism we get, it's going to be a very long program. That's all I can say. Well, if you're ready to move on.
All right, so you see that song is optimistic?
I think so. I think he's saying the New World Man still has hope. He has a good heart. He's the old cliche, it's the big dog in a small room wagging its tail and knocking over the china.
Yeah, but to me, it's still that sort of it goes back to the Devo thing, where it's just like he's fool enough to lose it. The technology is there, but humans have to know what to do with it.
I'm not sure he meant that at Canada. I'm just I love you and I've gone to Canada together. We had a great time. I descend from one of the founding families of Quebec. I would never diss Canada, but I don't think Neil Peart had Canada in mind when he was talking about the problem with the poisons and the weak enough to use it stuff. I think that was aimed pretty much at us, right?
Yeah, no, I wasn't saying anything about intending it for Canada. Just that humans are going to botch the thing up. That's kind of the thing that's there. It's just wise enough to win the world, but fool enough to lose it.
Would you say though? Neil Peart there is basically saying that the New World Man has a good heart, right?
I think it's more about the brain than the heart, but
because remember, closer to the heart, son. Closer to the heart. What's the
heart? Yeah, that one's about the heart.
The heart, Ramon. I definitely believe Neil Peart was saying that the New World Man's got a good heart, and we know how he feels about the heart. That the ones who hold high places must be the ones who start to mold a new mentality closer to the heart. So I believe, that the defense is going to rest on that. I think I'm right.
Well, I mean, we're in danger of making the whole show a Rush show now, so I'm going to move on.
We're going to do that someday, then, just on principle.
Maybe
there has to be an all Rush show.
Well, I certainly want to do an all Canada show at some point. Ooh. So we'll certainly mention them then.
All right. So
okay. Actually, sticking with Canada, I'm going to go with. If it's not Canada's favorite son, it certainly should be. Neil Young's Computer Age from Trans. And as has been pointed out, the cover of Trans shows an automobile that is very similar to the one put out by Tesla not that long ago. So there's that one. That was prescient. And
I don't. Oh, this is very sensitive. You're a Neil. I'm a fan, and I like Neil Young a lot. But you love Neil Young.
Yeah,
You find the silver lining in some of his clouds before I do. I would describe Trans on balance as being a cloud.
Computer Age is definitely a good song. Trans isn't the purest of Neil, but I think especially if you know the story behind Trans, and I'll go into that in a little bit, but I think that helps. Really, if you like Kraftwerk, it's an album influenced by Kraftwerk.
Boy, I'm kind of embarrassed neither of us put a Kraftwerk. Kraftwerk is like Devo's a little bit more directly
to the point.
Yeah, I think it's a little more on the nose than Kraftwerk. Kraftwerk, it has some other cultural signifiers going that make it more complicated, shall we say?
Yeah. Well, anyway, so the reason why I chose this song, so what it actually is about, Neil has like his, I believe his first son, who has, well, now I can't think of what his condition is called.
Like a muscular
yeah, like that. He was unable to communicate without using, like, there was, well, I think maybe along the lines of Stephen Hawking. You know, like he had a machine like that to communicate with, and so so it was just, like, in a way he was part computer, and then the song Computer Age is just kind of this idea of the mingling of humanity and technology and how that all works together. And the line that I really like is, "I need you to let me know that there's a heartbeat," trying to make the human connection in the midst of this technology, and not really knowing if you're human unless there's another human to let you know. And just that idea, and that's the reason why I chose the song.
Yeah, that's pretty persuasive. Pete Townsend never made the Lifehouse record that became Who's Next, but if you go back and read it a little bit or follow it at all, you could make a case that he had an understanding of what the internet might become, but he never finished that as a piece. Like, I think he's gone back now and tried to make Lifehouse out of it, but he has not ever gone back and actually made it, so you can't count Lifehouse as being like future positive and having gotten things right. Trans might not be too far within the way that you just described it. That's actually probably optimistic too, at least by our standards, is the idea that the human connection still is where the reality comes from. It's only connections with other humans that are going to matter.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it to me, the reason why that holds up too is just this idea of so many people communicating over social media and not sometimes even, like, at some point, do they even think of each other as human beings, or are they just information that comes across their telephones to them? Just that idea. I think that really makes the song hold up. It really still fits where we are now.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, Neil Young, if you read old interviews around that era, he was saying stuff that stuff like that he really liked the Human League, and he really thought that that's where music was going. That the records were going to sound like, the Human League. I think Bob Dylan used to say stupid shit like that too. Like,
well, at the same time, he was championing Devo and championing the Sex Pistols, so it wasn't just the Human League.
True,
the Human League might have. I don't actually know that quote, but maybe the Human League slipped in there. But it wasn't like he wasn't making the Human League into everything. Rust Never Sleeps. Talked. That was a reaction to the Sex Pistols and punk, and he loved Devo. I think Devo opened for him. I'm not sure about that, but I think that's the case. And had them in a movie that he directed.
And Devo covered Ohio.
Yep. Yeah.
right. Well, since I mentioned the Who's Next, let me just throw in a quick word in favor of Won't Get Fooled Again. In terms of Meet the New Boss, same as the old boss, while for a future-looking show is another big downer. Is that like, oh wow, hey, the '60s were great. We got screwed. We screwed it up, and we won't get fooled again. And then there's like a little bit.
No, we do. We get fooled again.
Yeah. Then meet the new boss. It turns out it's the same as the old boss.
That's the ironic final word on Won't Get Fooled Again. All right, so I think I'm going to make that my first section, right. and you can go on to your list.
All right, I'm going to stay classic rock for a minute, or maybe not. You know what? I'm going to finish up the Devo conversation, or I'm going to try to extend it into a sidebar, and then maybe let it go. Devo was, I think there was a certain crass element within the recording industry who just sort of looked at Devo as like, oh, that band wears costumes, and like, I believe Devo meant it. Devo put on a great show, and Devo had a great like image and a great story and a great, origin story too. They were the real deal, but they inspired a lot of not real deal. You know what I mean? Like, there were a lot of people a lot of what gets called new wave, and that's sort of more angular, just radically angular sound, was really abused terribly, by a lot of like bands who couldn't play and bands who couldn't think. Like, they were like trying to land somewhere between like Wires, Pink Flag, and Devo, and mostly just created dreck. I'd say the only band that really was that bad that ended up making something new out of it was The Cure. The Cure's first album is definitely like Wire meets Devo, and they figured out to do mechanical droney stuff in a new way, so they didn't end up in that sort of dead end of new wave. I'm going to call out what I think one of the dead ends of new wave was, and I still love it, and I don't care who knows it. I love the first Flock of Seagulls album. I love almost every song on it, and I think Space Age Love Song belongs in this show because lots of bands would like sing about the future, and they would mostly be singing about like the Cold War and Armageddon. Like, if you're trying to make songs about what the future was going to be, almost always they made songs about, oh my gosh, what possible good could come from the future we're building? Like, it's all sort of pessimistic. That was one way of sort of expressing what we thought the future was going to be. And then there was this whole other thing where the band sort of like implied that they were the future, or they were like the cutting edge of things. And so like the idea of like the dude from the Flock of Seagulls in that video for Iran, where he's just standing there playing a keyboard that's only 8 keys long. It's only like a 1-octave keyboard. Like, the drummer's playing stuff that looks like disposable plates, like, that was a version of the future, like, that was sort of, it was like, there was sort of like a scamming, like a grift that came off of Devo for people who are like, wow, Devo's got a great idea. We're going to make it just slightly more poppy, but we're gonna retain all the sort of alienating parts of it. There was just like a cottage industry of that shit, and I think its spawn, its evil spawn, is the Flock of Seagulls, and the fact that like that's, I think, what the millennials are laughing their asses off when they listen to 80s music, is just how bad a whiff the 80s got on what the future was going to be like. Like, we did, thank God we're not dressed like the Miami Vice cast, and it's like the real dystopic future was thinking we were all going to be dressed like the Flock of Seagulls, or that like in order to get girls we're gonna have a haircut like that. Like, that really was that was a variety of dystopianism that it has to be discussed. It has to be brought up. That album cannot go undiscussed in an album about the future. Not just because it's Space Age Love Song. Like, I think I could write a dissertation just on how overly used space as a metaphor is for the future. Like, it's the hackiest thing in the world, which is exactly why it's one of the key moments of the Flock of Seagulls first album, because that album is like, it's hacky, it's like empty calories, it's like it fills you up for about 2 seconds, but God, those 2 seconds are so good. So I don't have a theme for this other than like, this was the head fake future. This was the fake Louis this is the swap meet Louis of futures. And we were sold a ton of it. And I don't hold Devo responsible for it, but there couldn't have been this, like, Missing Persons is another one. I love Destination Unknown and Words. You can't make a case that that's Frank Zappa's backing band. You can't make a case that they didn't know how to play. They knew exactly how to play, and they made this like perfect like post-punk pop thing where they're basically like grabbing some of that smoke from Devo and repurposing it. And it ends up being just like this disposable empty calorie shit made out of the most like heady, thoughtful, awesome stuff that Devo was. So I guess I don't have a point other than the Swap Meet Devo. Swap Meet Louis Devo has to be mentioned on the Future show. I think the Flock of Seagulls first album is good enough to make that the example, so there you go.
Okay. All right. Okay. So this is my second section of my list. Again, titled "The Future's Uncertain and the End is Always Near." This is the Orwellian section because it does fit our times. Again, the Orwell book was 1984, but it could have easily been 2024. It does hold up, and there are a lot of songs, a whole lot of songs. Especially you can go through David Bowie's catalog and find a bunch. You can find 1984, for instance, and you can find Big Brother. Stevie Wonder has a song Big Brother. There are a lot of examples of Orwellian songs in the rock oeuvre. Or oeuvre. And anyway, the two that I went with for my list, the first one is Testify by Rage Against the Machine, who who controls the past now, controls the future, who controls the present now, controls the past, who controls the past now, and so on. That's about controlling the message. That is more poignant now than I think ever, at least in our country, as far as culturally significant. We see that explicitly every day about just trying to control the message. Of course, that's such a huge part of that book. And so that's the first song. And another song that is along the same lines is 2 + 2 = 5 by Radiohead. And that again, that's what it is. It's telling people the sky is green. 2 + 2 = 5. That's not true, but you're being told otherwise all the time until eventually everybody believes it. And actually, there's another song, or there are lyrics in the song, the Radiohead song 2 + 2 = 5, that will also come into play later on. So I do want to come back to that song as well for my next section. But yeah, for right now, those are the two songs in this section.
I want to thank you for not picking Queensryche's Operation Mindcrime. Because if you had, this would be the final episode of the program. But we didn't go there. Let's build an empire.
You're the only one of the two of us that even know that song, actually. So
that's why we work so well together. Is I can count on you to not bring the program down with that sort of stuff. Only I can do that. You know what? That's a fairly good grouping. I love. I mean, 1984 and Animal Farm are great, but I love his nonfiction stuff. Why I Write, his book, his stuff about good bad books, all of his stuff about the Spanish Civil War. Like, if you haven't read like his nonfiction, That's where his real genius was. Like, 1984 is great and all that's great, but the Eric Blair and George Orwell stuff, like, I'm about as big a fan as I think you can be of his worldview. So I don't know. A lot of bad music is made from it, but the ones you've mentioned are definitely not among that. Boy, I don't have that topic, and that was a good one. I wish I had done that. And I'm gonna go. I'm gonna come back to space as a topic, but I want to talk about the Sex Pistols and "God Save the Queen." And again, I didn't take notes ahead of time, so I promise not to go too crazy here. But like the last 15 or 20 seconds of "God Save the Queen" by the Sex Pistols is just Johnny Rotten saying "no future" at the top of his lungs, repeating it until like 90% of the times you see bootlegs of the Sex Pistols, the song is even called "No Future." And it's really interesting that maybe just like I'm a Gen Xer, so to me, I just assumed the future was fucked. I was a slacker, I was, like Pavement made sense. Like, don't try too hard, because like it's all fucked anyway, man. And the millennials have a very different flavor of feeling that the future is uncertain and the end is always near. But the punks had it too. There's always been every generation has some Armageddon to sing to, if you know what I mean. And I think you could go, any generation you could find a song that's like a list of their woes and their list of grievances with the world. I think Johnny Rotten was among the best of them to, like, the line, "They made you a moron," is one of the greatest lyrics in the history of humanity. Like, to get up and just say, "Look, these people have made you stupid." Like, literally, like, you ever had a friend where you're like literally wanting to shake them, like, "Wake up, you're completely being here." Like, it basically, like, that's what punk rock of that type is. That's what the Sex Pistols album is to me. So he predicted about as bleak, like the Sex Pistols were the black pill before we had the black pill, before we had the red pill, blue pill thing. Like, they were the black pill of their time. And I guess he got the problem right. Like, the people who were deindustrializing Britain and basically breaking their unions, destroying their healthcare system, like, this is laissez-faire capitalism. And for the Sex Pistols to get up and basically say, like, they're going to sell everything of value your country has, including your ass. You're fucked if you don't do something. Like, "No Future" at the end of the song "God Save the Queen" is about as eloquent and awesome a way of saying you're fucked as I've heard done, and it feels like every generation does it. So, well, you can't say John Rotten didn't end up with a future. Like, his nihilism was
it was lucrative.
It was lucrative, a filthy lucre for him. So he personally escaped that fate by singing about it. But what he was singing about still needed singing about. And I think, again, another 20-year-old kid, 21-year-old kid who just pulls out of his ass this incredible benediction that still works. And if you can't turn that album on and sing along with at least some of it as a giant fuck you to what's going on around you, like, you're kind of a dead soul, which comes next. We'll talk Joy Division later, maybe.
Okay.
But for now, like, that was some black pill shit. It was mostly right, but it didn't kill him. So maybe it's a little on the overwrought side. Maybe every generation's list of grievances is a little on the overwrought side. That would be, here ends the old patrician lecture.
Okay. Okay. So my next section, well, I won't name it just yet. We'll just go through it. We'll go through the songs. The first song, well, no, okay, so I guess I can maybe just call this the coming of the end, the beginning of the end. I'm going to start this with Nick Drake's Pink Moon, where he prophesizes that the pink moon is on its way. None of you stand so tall. The pink moon's going to get you all. And so I'll begin that with the prophecy. I'm sorry, just let me, I had a window open up on my computer, and so we're just going to deal with that quickly.
Thumbs up here. Thumbs up on the Nick Drake. That's a little bit of a left field call. I don't know if I've gotten to that one, but good on you, son.
Yeah, well, it keeps with the doom. Keeping with the doom. And okay, so next from there, when the end starts, I'm gonna go to the Clash's "London Calling." London is drowning, and I live by the river. The Ice Age is coming. And that also takes me back to Radiohead's 2 + 2 = 5. I'll lay down the track, sandbag and hide. January now has April showers, and that's what we're seeing. Like, we've been hearing about this in music forever. Eventually the Earth is going to change, and we're going to have another ice age, it does seem to be what we're seeing with wildfires in Australia recently and the Amazon. It is kind of what we're going through.
Not to poison, but I think Beck Saw Lightning is about that. Not to bring that song up again in another year, but just saying.
Yeah, maybe I'll have to rethink that. So continuing on with that, Arcade Fire's "Wake Up." Children wake up, hold your mistake up before they turn summer into dust. It keeps with the theme that I started with Devo. You got to learn from your mistakes. You have to wake up. You have to start doing something about this. Then from there, 5 years by David Bowie. News had just come over. We have 5 years left to cry in. News guy left and told us the Earth is really dying. Cried so much that his face was wet, and I knew he wasn't lying. And that goes back to Ziggy Stardust. So, this isn't anything new. This is something that we've been hearing about forever. Go ahead.
Mercy, Mercy Me might be the best Ecology song ever. I don't know if that's a show. Best environmental song.
Yeah, that could be a show.
All right, then I'll drop the topic for now.
Okay, so another song on this section, Idiotech by Radiohead. But we're not scaremongering. This is really happening. We're not. It just continues this idea that that this is going on. You should really pay attention, do something about it. Yeah, that's my upbeat third section.
Yeah, Radiohead again. It makes sense. Radiohead is also part of that aesthetic of like, they don't necessarily have to come out and literally say, hey, here's some songs about what the world's going to be like if we don't change things. But like, pretty much everything they've done is about that topic, really. Or it's about how degenerated the current world is, that's just we're going to be, starved of any warmth in the future, at least emotional warmth.
It's very, very dystopian. Right, most Radiohead songs. A lot of Radiohead songs.
Yeah. Well, let me look at my list here. The only dystopian one that I can really, although Emerson, Lake and Palmer's Carnival 9 is one of the great ecological songs. It's no Mercy, Mercy Me, but I might throw that in on the playlist. I'm not going to put a bunch of Emerson, Lake and Palmer on any playlist that I expect human beings to. However, if you love first generation synthesizers, and you love the overblown goodness of prog, they've got a couple tasty little slices. So I'll put that on there. But the most is hope. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, there may be optimists. They're saying the show never ends. most of the songs on my list are saying that the show does indeed end.
But there's only one blade of grass in their future. There's one blade of grass left.
But at least the show never ends.
That's true. The most recent, like, techno, nihilistic prognostication songs, like, metal's got some good ones. I think the best, like, technology is going to kill us all song of the dystopian type is Painkiller by Judas Priest. I can't say enough good things about Painkiller by Judas Priest. I swear there's a fucking cottage industry on YouTube of reaction videos to Painkiller. And I literally, if you just want to waste an afternoon, maybe some crappy weather outside, just type in reaction video, Judas Priest, Painkiller. Now, there's something strange going on there, and I can't quite figure out what the pattern is, but it seems that every African-American person who does reaction videos is like inundated with comments saying you have to review Painkiller. Like, I'm not sure what that dynamic really is, but it's like Future Shock, which is Future Shock, I think, is a terrible James Brown song, as I recall. But anyway, neither here nor there.
Isn't it a Curtis Mayfield song?
Yeah, Future Shock by Curtis Mayfield's bad too.
Yeah.
I mean, I like Curtis Mayfield, but that's really bad. Anyway, I'm going to put in, I don't know if this closes out the category of technology is going to doom us all, but of all the permutations of it there have been throughout time, I'm going to put Painkiller into submission for a top billing, just because, like, it's a 10 out of 10 in terms of just quality for a heavy metal song. Like, I think it's got 8 guitar solos. It has, like, Judas Priest almost doing, like, blast beats. It's the last great Judas Priest song, in my humble opinion, and they've had plenty. So if you don't know Painkiller, don't start with reaction videos, but do listen to it in your headphones as loud as you can tolerate a few times. Then go look at the reaction videos. I think you'll find that the shock value, the Armageddon value that Judas Priest unfurled, it still packs a lot of punch to this day. Painkiller, Judas Priest, enjoy.
And I don't think I start anything with reaction videos myself, but that's just me.
There is a psychology to reaction videos that our country does not seem to want to address. Like, there's something going on there about what it's like. Literally, it's like we've turned these people into like cam girl type or cam guy type people, where it's like you use the comment section to, like, instead of saying, like, you know, a little to the left, baby, it's like, please listen to YYZ by Rush. Like, there's some, like, perverted thing going on there where people demand the same 10 songs of the reaction video people. You could have a career of just doing nothing other than, like, Rush, YYZ, Painkiller, Run to the Hills, Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here. Like, it's like a greatest hits of stuff that over and over people want reaction videos to. Very strange. Why Painkiller too? Well, whatever.
I'll look into that. I'll send my resume.
You must.
Okay, so I'm just going to go back to Idiotech to begin my next section. So Idiotech is about the Ice Age as well, and it starts out with the lines, "Who's in the bunker?" or "Who's in a bunker? Women and children first." And so that's where we are now. We're in my list. We're heading into Armageddon here. Strap in. Strap onto your chair.
Alex Jones still uses "Silent Running" from Mike and the Mechanics as bumper music, as far as I know.
Yeah, I don't know why you know that.
I'm just saying, like, Silent Running is getting a little bit into the territory you're getting into. I just wanted to warn you. It's just a friendly warning. Stay away. We didn't discuss Mike and the Mechanics before the show. Let's not.
We are going to do a Mike and Mechanics show. We are going to do a whole Mike.
Take the children and the flag, whatever flag they offer.
I'm going to nip that one in the bud.
Okay, sorry, I saw my chance. I took it. Sorry, not sorry.
Okay, so anyway, to start this section, I'm starting with Elvis Costello's "Waiting for the End of the World." We're not quite into shit hitting the fan yet, but to me, like, still the ultimate, like the gold standard of the Armageddon song, the shit hitting the fan song. It's "Gimme Shelter" by the Rolling Stones. It's you still can't really top that one in my mind.
Interesting.
Yeah. And let me see here. Go ahead.
Well, you've got, boy, the Rolling Stones do have a couple candidates for that. "Sympathy for the Devil" is, boy, that's a tough one. "Gimme Shelter" is really hard to argue with, though.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're talking Armageddon.
Oh, well, "Sympathy for the Devil" is basically the devil trying to explain, like, yeah, this is the shit I've always done. This is the shit I'm always going to do. Like, yeah, this is it. This is the program. Get rid of it.
It does have a place in this. Like, it definitely could have a place in this list. But like, "Gimme Shelter" is, there's no way around it. There's no way to not have "Gimme Shelter" on here.
Yeah, you're right.
And I mean, it really, the whole song is just everything is the shit is hitting the fan. Everything is coming to an end. It's not looking forward to it. It's not looking back at what just happened. It is going on right now. You're in the eye of the storm. Another angle on that, though, for the next song on my list, it's, the person that goes into the bunker again. It's "We Will Become Silhouettes" by the Postal Service. And so that's the perspective. If, the shit's hitting the fan, but here you are, you're safe from it, and you're hopefully going to have something to go back to once it's all over with.
I recommend the Donald Fagen video for New Frontier, which is literally the story of kids going down for using the bomb shelter in the backyard as a makeout spot. Very, very interesting. Again, I don't want to talk about Donald Fagen just because it's more reactionary crap and baby boomer self-apologizing. But your theme reminded me of that one. It's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, and to give you some lines from that song, well, we can go back to "Gimme Shelter" as well. "The fire is sweeping our very street today, burns like a red cold carpet, Mad Bull lost its way." Most people know "Gimme Shelter," I'm sure, so I don't need to go into all of that. But "We will become silhouettes. The air outside will make our cells divide at an alarming rate until our shells simply cannot hold all our insides in, and that's when we'll explode, and it won't be a pretty sight. We'll become silhouettes when our bodies finally go."
Interesting.
Yeah. So that this concludes the Armageddon section, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I wish I could say. You know what? I'm gonna try a diversion here. This ends up being a bit dystopic too, but just in a sort of a meta way. I want to talk about Donna Summer's "I Feel Love," because I believe that was a "I Feel Love" is like the presence nostalgia for how the past thought of the future. Like, I think it's a great song. I think it's one of the greatest songs recorded, and I've loved that song since it was current, and I loved all that like Euro disco stuff with the synthesizers. But like, I Feel Love really was, not only did it sound totally different than anything else, I've always thought that it was like trying to replicate the sound of the Doppler effect of a helicopter. It's just nothing sounded like that before. It sounded about as futuristic as like anything ever had. Like even like in the year 2525 by Zager and Evans, like that's like has all the space tropes in it and the big echoey sound and the big echoey space, but that did like 60s future was spacey and open and organic and warmish. But like that shit, like I Feel Love was clinical and efficient and German, you know, like it definitely was mechanical as hell. Like it predicted the future of New Order more than it did Bobby Brown, you know. So to me, like Donna Summer, I Feel Love is a super important record. It is the future. It's about the future, but it never mentions the future. And I would just say that if you have any doubt of my thesis on this, try to find the footage, the contemporaneous performance of I Feel Love by Donna Summer. I think she did it on the Midnight Special. There's video footage of it. Like, it's one of the greatest dance records of all time, and she doesn't dance to it. She makes like robot motions and stands still. Like she's like mesmerized. She seems like she's mesmerized and mechanical. It didn't inspire like a dance vibe, even though it's like one of the best like modern dance music is based on it. But I don't think they understood it that way even in their time. Like they it's the most futuristic thing I've ever heard, and they got the future wrong. But I don't hold that against it. It's still great for what it was. So definitely dig up the 12-inch version. It's like 12 minutes long. It's among the more satisfying 12-minute songs ever put out. I would also say it's the greatest dance 12-inch probably ever put out, although that's really debatable. But I would put that probably as my favorite dance 12-inch of all time. It's certainly my favorite. Whether it's the best or not, I'll leave for another time. But Donna Summer, I Feel Love, find the 12-inch version. It's pretty easy to find. It's like the best 11 or 12 minutes, I think, put together, certainly in that decade.
All right, I'll check it out. Okay, so do you have more songs on your list? Because I'm heading into my last section.
I can do one more after you're done, and I'll keep it short. Promise.
Okay. All right. So my last section is about acceptance, I guess, of the end of the world, and it starts in what is probably a pretty obvious place. REM's "It's the End of the World as We Know It," and I Feel Fine. Just total acceptance of the whole thing coming to the end. There's nothing we can do about it. We'll embrace it. Offer me solutions. Offer me alternatives. I'll decline. End of the world as we know it. From there, because hopefully there is some place to go when it's all done, but we don't know what it is. Road to Nowhere by Talking Heads. We're on a road to nowhere. But, you know, hopefully, as the song goes, we're on the road to paradise. Here we go, here we go. But the paradise, the road to nowhere and going to paradise seem to be one and the same. So it's that uncertainty. And then the final song on my list, I believe, is not on Spotify. So you will not get the full picture on Spotify. But then my final song ends with Judgment Day, and it's When the Man Comes Around by Johnny Cash.
Ooh. Yeah, that's a great one. That is a great one. I don't have any that fit that category, although the Johnny Cash, yeah, I wish I'd thought of that. I'm a little jealous of that one. Wow, there are some big ones that didn't make our discussion. Rocket Man by Elton John didn't make it. Eve of Destruction, basically, that's like as downer a future song as could be. I wanted to talk about the Laurie Anderson "Oh Superman" just because it was a song that was so futuristic sounding. Like I still think it is the future. I don't think we've caught up to it yet. I'll throw that on, give that one a listen. The one I want to go out with just because, again, I'm hung up on how the past represented what they thought the future was going to be. Fly Like an Eagle with the space intro by Steve Miller Band is, I had to go last. Again, I grew up in Cook County, Illinois. I lived in Cook County, Illinois in the mid-'70s with my grandparents, and their youngest son was about 16 years old in 1976. So I heard all that crap like in its time at blaring decibels. One of his all-time favorites, and by extension mine, is the Fly Like an Eagle album, which starts with Space Intro, which is the greatest 30 seconds ever recorded of space noises. And I mean, like, it really doesn't, it's so great, but it doesn't even prepare you for how great Fly Like an Eagle truly is. If you haven't looked at the original album cover of Fly Like an Eagle, you need to check yourself and you need to go look at it. Steve Miller is playing a left-handed Strat restrung to be played right-handed as a Jimi Hendrix homage. But I don't think Jimi Hendrix would have spent 5 seconds listening to this record. This is like the most AM radio ready like collection of hits ever. And Fly Like an Eagle, if you want to talk about like a profundity from the mid-'70s, try out Time Keeps on Slippin' into the future. You know how much more fun the world would be if time was slipping instead of like ruthlessly marching ahead with clinical precision? The planet would be it would be awesome to live on a planet where time slips into the future. But Steve Miller is emotionally constipated and doesn't pick up on that fact. He is also describing the world in very, very dystopian terms, in which we do not shoe the babies who don't have shoes on their feet, and we don't house the people living in the street. He knows there's a solution, but he can't get it figured out. So what does he want to do? He wants to get high. He wants to fly like an eagle, like we all do, Steve. So, like, it's really a pessimistic song, Old Fly Like an Eagle, even though, you know, from like that 70s stoner point of view, I guess time was slipping rather than relentlessly marching forward. But maybe that's some advice we all could benefit from. Maybe that's what we should think about the future.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he isn't saying that from the perspective of Steve Miller, because, you know, it is what a lot of people seem to do. You know, just avoidance is the way to go.
That's right. But if you're in the 70s and you have like some hot conversion van and you've got your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is, and you're smoking bad reefer and having bad sex in the back of a conversion van, and you've got Steve Miller Band like blaring, like that's both dystopic and utopic at the same time. Like there's a huge percentage of the society that would give anything to go back to living like that. Like for us, it would just be like, oh, that'd be like a funny movie scene or something. I don't know, it really does encapsulate all of the topic of the future for me, because it's, to your point, I think you hit it on the head here, which is like, the dystopia that we get through the music is sort of entertainment. There's really nothing we can do about it anyway. We should probably just forget about it and go get high.
Well, yeah, I mean, it as dark as and gloomy as, unfortunately, this, you know, like I just want to address the fact that, you know, like last night we were talking about what we're gonna do for the first show, and it seemed like a good idea to go with this futuristic thing. Just start off the new year and the new decade looking forward, and then it just ends up being such a downer. But at the same time, you know, as dark and just, you know, horrible like the events of a song like "Gimme Shelter" is, it's also packaged in a way that is, you know, like it rocks, and you don't listen to it to bring yourself down. You actually get something uplifting out of it because it's music, and it's great music. But if you really examine what's going on in the song, it's just awful. It's just awful events, and You know, it really. If you're living it, it would be horrible. But because you're listening to it in the context of great music,
yeah,
it's a different deal.
I will say that it's unlikely anybody is going to start doing a bunch of optimistic songs about the future, given our current circumstance.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So another song that didn't make our list was Timbuktu. Was it Timbuktu 3?
No,
I don't remember anymore. Timbuktu 3, Timbuktu.
Yeah. It was Timbuktu.
The future's so bright. You gotta wear shades.
But even that was very slack. It was very much designed to just be a sort of the back of the hand compliment, you know. It just wasn't supposed to be. It was sarcastic.
Yeah, I don't think it was read that way usually.
They had one song that was really good called "Sunshine." I love that song. I know they were sort of a one-hit wonder, and I know you and I disagree about this, but I don't think we pick a topic for next week necessarily. But we did have a couple of strands here that we could pick up on. One is I do want to talk about the '90s at some point this year because I think Timbuktu 3 is like emblematic of the '90s. It was just this era of like one-off novelty records for like just sort of smug Gen Xers. It was not a great era most of the '90s.
Okay, and so just to summarize our argument about the '90s, you seem to want to take pull out examples of what was horrible in the '90s and make that emblematic of the '90s.
Yes.
Whereas with the '80s, you want to take like the best example of what happened in the '80s and make that emblematic of the '80s, and that's the whole reason why we have this argument. Is because it's just like you're taking like the worst example of something that happened in one decade and making that the story, but cherry picking another decade, and so that's why we have this argument.
But I would say that I'm talking about each decade has an Overton window. It has a range of things that occurred. It has highs of a certain height and lows of a certain low. What I'm getting at is like the '90s lows are so bad that their good isn't enough to get them back up to par. And I think the '80s much more easily is net positive on that equation than the '90s. That's all. And I think the records are a symptom of the problem.
But my whole thing is I think you could do the same thing with the '80s. You could pull out your Pac-Man Fever and make that emblematic of the '80s, and I think it's really a wash. I don't think we're going to really. I don't think we're going to be able to settle that one.
All right. Well, one-hit wonders should not be a decade's greatest music, and I would say that there's a hot take for you: is the greatest '90s music is from their one-hit wonders. "Steal My Sunshine" alone almost redeems the decade.
And I think that's crazy. That's not the best stuff that came out of the '90s.
All right. Well, it's a little over the top, but I'm going to prepare myself to defend some variation of it.
That's a lot over the top. That's just that isn't a top 100 song from the '90s.
All right. Did you buy the Mike and the Mechanics record in the '80s? Because if you did,
I did not.
Okay. Not even from the record club?
Nope.
All right. Well, then we'll pick a topic. I'm sure it'll be riveting. I kind of like flying by the seat of the pants here and doing a call an audible and going quick. But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we definitely by the end of the evening, not in the next minute or so, but we should come up with a topic because this one turned out to be quite unwieldy as a showcase by my 16-song playlist. So I don't want to get myself in that situation again.
I like it unwieldy, so I'm fine with it. Whatever it is, I'm going to be fine with it. So that's what we'll do next time when we see you next. When I will be fine with it.
All right. Well, we'll see you in another week.
Laters.